All right, welcome. This is just going to be a quick video. If you've been checking in on my GitHub, you may have noticed that there's been a few changes to the game engine and asset manager. A few of these changes were made by a student of mine, KV Lee, and he upgraded it just to be a little bit more modern. And I wanted this video to just cover a couple of those changes in case you were curious about how they work. The first couple are just inside the asset manager, and they're just a simplification. And maybe to get started on this, I'll just mention on one of the things that has been changed is KV's gone ahead and changed the way that I've declared this listener function. I had it declared more the old way, which was sort of you declare a function like this. If you do it this way, this type of function loses the scope of the this variable, and it was why we had to do the var this equals that equals this, which is a common design pattern in older JavaScript, but it's something that we don't need anymore if we use the arrow function the way that KV had it set up, which is a newer development in more recent JavaScript updates, which allow us to define functions. It's still defining a function on the fly, and it's doing it in the same way. Okay, we just aren't using the function keyword. That saves us a few keystrokes. And then with the arrow function, we also still maintain the scope for our variable this, which will still refer back now, in this case, as we would expect it to the object, the asset manager that we want it to refer to. So what that does is not only does it save us some keystrokes by using the arrow function here instead of the more traditional declaration of a function, it allows us to use this instead of having to use that or self, as is common in older JavaScript. So that's the only major change, at least that I know of here in the asset manager. We've done that twice, once in the error logger and in the loading logger. And that's it for the asset manager. But we're basically going to be using that same design pattern, the design pattern of moving from a more traditional function, anonymous function declaration to an arrow function declaration, which will allow us to simplify our this equals or that equals this notation. And I think KV has done that one extra time, or a couple maybe extra times in the game engine. In the game engine, a few extra changes that has been added. He's added a debugging flag, as well as just a little readability simplification. So if you didn't like the fact that game loop was declared and called itself all in the same declaration, he's cleaned that up just a little bit, instead declaring it as a const, still using, notice, the arrow function declaration instead of a function declaration. That's just a style choice. If you like this style, go ahead and use this style. If you'd like to define things, so for instance, we could do this as function game loop, and we would get the same thing here. So oops, of course my notation, I have to get my syntax right, but you would get the same thing here if you define the function in this way as you're doing it here with the game loop. The only thing that this does for us that's sort of helpful is it now makes it clear that we're defining the function and then calling it, and that starts off the infinite loop, remember. Okay. So I think the last thing, or the other place where KV has made these changes is in a couple of the function declarations here. So again, he's gone ahead and made these into arrow function declarations so that the this operator, we don't have to make an alias for it again. So that's just simplifying this code. And again, that's probably better style given that we can use arrow functions now. And the only difference here is, so you might notice that E there, that's again shorthand for E, like I'm taking an argument E. And again, all of that is shorthand for function E, okay, where you're taking an argument there, E in the function. So all that's doing is just, again, saving us some keystrokes, making it a little bit easier. You'll notice KV changed the style of this function as well, to again have that same sort of style, but again, this is just the argument E being mapped into this function over here. The same style is being used for all of our different listeners. The one extra thing that KV chose to do was add a couple extra default listeners These might be something that you might want to use in your game, but maybe not. The reason is these log keys in a very general way as being down or up. But often what you're going to want to do is convert your keys into some kind of signal. So in my Super Mario Brothers demo, I convert the A key and the left arrow key into the left signal, and the left signal is all that I really want. This leaves the conversion out of it. So if you need to do some converting into some kind of meaning, what those keys mean, then and you really only need this if there are more than one key that have shared meaning, in which case you'll need this additional mapping. If you don't, you usually just need to know which keys are down and which keys are up. And this is an array, technically a map, that will store any key as true if it is down and false if it is up. And the way you can access that is very similar to the way you could access the left or the right in the Marios, is by just using, this is in the game engine, so you just do this dot game usually dot keys, and then you would have to reference whichever key would be pressed down, and those are things like key A, key D, key S, right arrow, left arrow, things like that. So you index this with a string, and you should be able to find all of those on the Mozilla Developer Network. For instance, you can see here I've just loaded up the keyboard event.code off the Mozilla Developer Network. This is a great place to find any details you want about JavaScript usually. You can see here code returns, for instance, for the Q key, it will return key Q, and that's a string. So if you use that string, you can plug that in to the keys array here. Again, it's array, it's a map. You can plug that in here, the string here, and it will tell you if that key, say key Q, is down or up based on that true or false. Now, if you like this style, and this style is very useful if you have usually lots of different keys that you need to keep track of in your game, in which case you will want to, you might want to have them stored conveniently in an array like this. On the other hand, if you're maybe got only a small number of keys, like I use for my Super Mario Brothers, just ASD F or ASD W, and maybe a couple of other keys for jumping, say, or shooting, then you might want to just set up specific listeners for each one, or rather a specific listener that listens only for those keys and sets particular variables for those keys. That might just make it a little bit easier for you to access them. Again, both styles work very well, and either style is available. This one is just already built in to the game engine. So those are some of the main modernization changes that we've made to the game engine and the asset manager. So thanks a lot for checking out this video, and we'll see you in that next video.